Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Here's my first question. It's very open-ended, but I think inquiring minds want to know.
Okay.
How do you become a two-star general? How do you make that path? That seems extremely, extremely difficult.
I have an answer. I have an answer.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, given my audience, and I'm sitting up straight. I think I have the good fortune of having had and I say had only because my father's no longer with us. My mother is, amazing parents. And my father told us, all three girls, we're all very close in age. I am the middle. Get used to hearing no in your life, but don't accept it. And I believe that that's in my head. That is always in my head. Not that I don't listen to people, and not that I don't have an agile mindset, but my point is, when your head and your heart and your gut are aligned and you hear no and you still believe and you've got the business case to prove it, keep going, because you have nothing to lose if you don't ask, right? If you don't ask, you haven't even started.
Let me ask you, this is an interesting question just for me. Just coming off the cuff, I've got three girls. So I'm curious from a military.
Lucky guy, Al.
Yeah, I know. I am a lucky guy. I'm a lucky guy. Look, girls like their daddies. They come home. Let's put it that way. Obviously, you're a testament to that. Your dad must have done something right. Although when I think of military dads, I think very, boom, and was he very, what's the word I'm looking for? Direct and, military-ish? Or when you're dealing with your three girls at home, do you leave that at the work table? How did that go around? I'm just curious. From a dad with three girls.
My sisters and I joke that my dad was the king of common sense. And full disclosure, my father was also a flag officer of 2 stars in the Army, active duty his whole career as an artillery officer, and retired and went on to do some things in business. But my father was tough but fair. He was, again, going back to the king of common sense, the way he approached things was tried to use logic. Some of us listened, some of us didn't. I
wonder which one you were.
I might have been a little bit, I would say healthy rebellion, but also mischievous. But I learned a lot through those processes, and I think I became stronger because of it. But I would also say, mixed with my background and my dad's background. My dad is an immigrant from Italy, the family, and they moved to an immigrant Italian neighborhood in upstate New York where everybody spoke Italian. And so what I would say is that work ethic, the harder right versus the easier wrong in every occasion, even if it's painful, that work ethic is one that is just so ingrained in me and my sisters, and I use that as my litmus test in a lot of decision making, quite frankly. And that sounds so simple, but and I know that it isn't, but at the heart of who I am, that is always how I'm going to do things, even if it really hurts to do it.
It sounds like you were rebellious, but you were still listening.
Yes.
That's the key. I find that I've learned that. I mean, I used to be, when I was younger, I was like, they don't listen to me. They don't ever, but they do listen. They do listen. Yes. They're just trying to be rebellious. I think that's normal, but it sounds like you were listening. So how did that affect, and this gets into a bigger topic, but how did that affect your leadership style? What's powerful? You talked about a couple already of your superpowers. What's powerful about your leadership style?
This is going to sound antithetical, but what is powerful to my leadership style, quite frankly, is that I have 2 sisters who are so strong that I bounce ideas off of, especially I'll call big rock decisions in my life. They always are a part of my inner circle of who I consult. And if I've got a silly, wild idea that is just really risky, I will ask them to tell me how to improve my thinking on that if I'm wrong. I am open to hearing that, and I'm open to saying it. When I was younger, I don't think I was, but I'm
None of us were.
yeah.
But I get you. It's a growth mindset, which
Yes,
not everybody has. It's like if you've ever read Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, I love that book.
I
Because
do
now when I
too.
meet people, you can see what mindset they have, like within 3 minutes.
I
I don't
agree.
know.
But I also will say that I invite healthy friction because I think friction is good. And that is also part of an agile mindset. And I go into conversations that way. And
Did
I
you,
test my own hypotheses that way.
what translated from the military that was just, very great training? And there's got to be something also that you looked at and say, that's maybe meant for the military and it doesn't apply to the corporate life.
So to answer your first question, the military decision-making process, which we call MDMP, is a superpower. And it is 13 steps that take you through complex decision making. And when I say complex decision making, it's even the decision that is really the Gordian knot that you feel is just so, it's the wicked problem. It feels unsolvable. It forces you to pull apart the elements of the decision as well as the outcomes you're seeking, and then think second and third order effects of those decisions and to war game those. So war gaming is friendly and enemy. If I do this, what will the enemy do? Well, if the enemy does this, what will I do? And if I do that, then what will the enemy do? It's thinking that many steps ahead. I do that like it's just it's been trained into me such that it is part of me. And I would say that in answer to your first question, the military decision-making process is alive and well in my head. It is an invincible summer. Even in the darkest of the outcomes you might reach, I'm always trying to figure out how to opportunity flip the results of that. And sometimes it is hard, but understanding it in context, being able to explain that in context, helps other people get to yes, even if there's friction along that path. So I would say
Same.
that's one thing I apply to both.
Does that apply to both big rocks and small rocks alike?
Yes, yes.
And say more about opportunity flip.
So oftentimes, depending on, how you look at things, there are some people who will take a negative approach to it, but knowing that that outcome may look negative on paper, take a step back and look at, well, what does that mean? Well, why? Why are we doing that? And what does that mean? What's the outcome? And figure out what are the salient things from a positive perspective that may actually be the unintended consequences that maybe strategically is what we should be shooting. That's where our North Star should actually be versus
One
the
thing,
negative thing that people are immediately focusing on.
one thing that I read about Warren Buffett is he credits the looking at why something will not work as more of his success in terms of the confirmation bias of why it always will work. So he looks at it like a stock pick, by example, say, what could go wrong here? And then once he's able to figure that out and he still says, hey, still a great buy, then he'll go back into the confirmation piece of it.
I like that.
There's some elements of that.
I would say yes, but I just learned something from you on that. I'm going to take note.
Yeah, well, it's all that I read. That's what I always steal from other people. That's what I do, and I'm going to
Well,
steal
then
from you today.
this is the book I'm reading, and I just took my page out of where I was in it.
That's funny that you say that because I actually I'm doing the audiobook of that right now.
And since this is a podcast, it's the end of the world is just the beginning. That's what
Yes.
we're talking about here.
Thank you for that. As the as the host, I forgot we were doing a podcast. See, we're having so much fun. Yeah, for those listeners, and I had somebody on the podcast. I think I don't know 3 or 4 podcasts ago when they recommended it, and so I started reading it. I don't know that it's a pick me up though.
No, but here's what I will say. And this came as this is probably going to sound funny, but anyway. So General McConville is the chief of staff of the Army. He's the 4-star head of all of the United States Army, regardless of whether you're active, reserve, guard, a state guard. And they usually have a reading list. He recommended that book on a meeting that I was in 3 weeks ago. I immediately, it was a secret meeting, so you can't have cell phones. As soon as I got out of that meeting, I went over to my phone and I ordered it from Amazon. And yes, it is there. It is somewhat. There's some bleak parts of it, but I think
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to inform yourself on worldview as well as the dynamics of today's economics and the tectonic shifts in our global trade and globalization and security and the erosion of who we believe we thought we were going to be trading with. And
I totally agree.
if you
Sorry,
saw the news yesterday when Arvind and President Biden were in Poughkeepsie, and they were talking about what we're going to be doing along with 6 other, major companies, I think it's actually 5, that are, along with the CHIPS Act, rowing at the same time. He talked about, that supply chain for chips is going to start and end in the United States. There's one example of how that whole supply chain is going to change.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think it's a great book so far too. And you're right. I'm listening to it. As I'm listening to it, there's several points where you go like, oh yes, yes. I mean, it's not necessarily obvious, but you can see the dynamics and how they're changing. And then what you're seeing, like the CHIPS Act, it's a great.
Yes.
So I would recommend it as well. I was going to ask this. I think you've already answered it, but maybe I'll just throw it out there anyway. Is because I think it's a no-brainer now. But do you feel you see the world differently because of your time in the military?
Oh, yes. And here's why. I know we didn't talk about this, but I've been deployed twice. Once as a major, typically around, a major is typically somebody who has anywhere between, 8 or 9 years in the military, and then, on the high end, it might be 13 to 15 years, depending on your rate and pace of progression. And I just tell you that for context, because I was in Iraq in the bloodiest time in 2004 of the war, and we were being mortared and shot at. And I tell you that only because it puts life into context. And so my military experience going through extreme life and death scenarios for your people who are in multiple different locations, on a daily basis, hourly basis, and having to make sure that you are taking care of them 24/7 and thriving in each of the jobs that they do, um, is an amazing and daunting task and privilege that we get to do that. That puts my life into context. It puts my life into context in stressful situations, even at IBM, because at the darkest days, I can at least in my head say, you know what? This is stressful. It is important. It is urgent, but no one's being shot at. No one's going to die today, but we have to get this done. Here's why. This is what's at risk for the client or for us in IBM. And, we owe this to whomever is asking for us to do this, or for the greater, population of our organization. It's the right decision to be made.
I smile because I was just about to ask a question that's a silly question, but I've listened to a podcast, another podcast. He's an investor, and he was talking about stress. And when he gets stressed, spent a lot of time in the military. He was a Green Beret, and he says, "Look, I'm not getting shot at, so that's my level set." Do you do that for perspective? I know it's a
Yes.
silly.
Yes. And the other part of my perspective is if I get really wound up, it usually also means I need to go work out. We all have different ways of coping with stress. And mine is running a few miles, sometimes getting lost.
How many miles?
Anywhere from 3 to 5 on any typical day, but not every day, certainly, because you have to cross train, and I get bored even running sometimes, so I do other things. But it is, we all have to find our balance and how you relieve stress in different ways.
If I could say so, it seems like one of your superpowers is energy. You've got a lot of energy.
I get told that a lot.
That's a
Might be
compliment.
annoying.
No, that's a very big compliment. I get told that too. I don't know if mine's a compliment, but yours is definitely a compliment. Look, I wanted to do a quick lightning round because I want to be respectful of your time. Anything you would stress about the learnings that have made you who you are based on military, et cetera, all the leadership that we talked about? Anything you want to just recap, or something I didn't ask that you wish I would have?
If the question is about me or about advice to others?
I like the advice to others. Let's go there. Well, I like both of those actually. So give me either. But I think the advice to others based on your learnings. I think people are out there be curious to know.
Stay curious, to amplify your exact word. Stay passionate, be a lifelong learner, be open to criticism. Use that for the superpower that it can give you as the gift. Sometimes that's constructive criticism. And also try to figure out how do you ameliorate situations where somebody you feel like you're getting defensive. Try to figure out that trigger in you and figure out a way to respond, not react to it. And there's a difference, right? Whether that's humor, whether that's asking a question because you need clarification of what was actually meant to be heard. Those are kind of the things that I would say. And find another outlet besides work to balance your life, because there is no work-life balance. Honestly, I sincerely believe that it's a blur. You have to be intentional about how those things move and at what speed.
I love it. I love it. I'm glad you answered it that way. And we can keep going. I'm going to do a lightning round. And this is
Okay.
like 20-second each, just no right or wrong answer. You're going to be great at this because you've already done extremely well at this. But I'm going to go through a few quick questions. I'll just go through them quick.
All right, I'm at the edge of my seat. Go.
What are you most proud of?
Proud of both my military and my IBM teams that I get the privilege to lead.
All right. Passions outside of the workplace you just mentioned before. Where do you lose time?
I lose time when I'm working out.
Nice. How do you define, very simple terms, how do you define success?
When I define success, and obviously it's very contextual, but I define success when I start to see lightning, bolts and big light bulbs going off in people's facial expressions, and they get excited about the opportunity in front of them. That to me is just amazing. That transformation in them. Yes.
All right, like it. Your go-to order at your favorite restaurant.
Go-to order at my favorite restaurant is probably Indian food. Spicy.
Wow. Spicy Indian. Do you have a favorite restaurant?
There are several in the area that I live in.
All right. Indian restaurants, I presume.
I love Indian food and Italian food.
Yeah.
Go figure, my last name's Del Rosso. I'm a terrible cook though, just, I'll say that in full disclosure.
You're a good eater. I'm a good eater. Anyway, that's what I like.
That's how we have to work out.
Yeah, exactly. So then you earn it. I do the same thing. What is the last gift you gave somebody?
The last gift I gave somebody, probably the book I just mentioned.
What are you curious about right now?
I am curious about where we're taking our business in the fourth quarter and all that we're going to achieve in Expert Labs, really. We just have so many opportunities and such talent on the team. It's really just, I want to continue to unleash that and allow them to thrive. And I'm excited about our fourth quarter.
Awesome. I only got two more and we're done. What's your number one role model that's not related to you? Because we already know your dad and some of your sisters will be in there. I've already heard that. What's your number one role model not related to you?
Colin Powell. And he's
Nice.
no longer with us, but he
Yeah.
was somebody who always inspired me, still inspires me today. All of his insights, the ways in which he treats people with such dignity and respect, always did. And even in such tough times, he still is such a role model for me and always was in my career. And I was lucky that there was a family connection as well to know him.
Oh, wow. He's got some great quotes. I use them all the time.
Yes.
All the time. All right. Last one. 3 people you can go to dinner with, either living or dead. Who would it be? You only get 3.
Oh, this is tough. I have to
And
say
you look-
Michelangelo would be one.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
I'm going to say the Pope just because he's who he is, but he's also very, very worldly. And I love to travel and I love to learn new things. And surely I could learn something from his travels as well as the way he looks at the world, which is hopeful. And the third, who would it be? I'm going to say Arvind.
Wow.
In the
We can probably
context of
make
this
that happen.
discussion, I would love to have a fireside chat with Arvind to just hear the ground truth with no filters and no recorded.
I hear what you're saying. Fantastic. Arvind, the CEO of IBM. Look, the good news about those questions, they can always change, but right now, I love how you just went after it and answered. A lot of people struggle or whatever. You just answered because you can change them. I mean, these are just fun questions. Diane, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I learned a lot. I've got a lot of work to do now. I got books I'm reading that current book, but I want to go down the thought process of military, decision-making processes, etc. I've got a lot to do. So thank you, and I'm sure everybody else is going to benefit from this conversation.
Al, thank you very much for the privilege and the time, and for the listeners out there. If you believe that I have some things that I can learn from, please send them my way. I'm always open to new ideas and inspiration. So thanks again, Al,
Awesome.
and thanks,
You
Tim.
bet. We'll
Good.
do it again. Expert Labs, keep killing it. Fourth quarter, game on. You're going to do great. I know it because I came from there. I know how great you are. Agree with everything Diane said. Listeners, thank you for listening. Hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you on the podcast. Thanks again, Diane.
Thank you. All righty. Bye-bye.